Hello, thank you for being with me. I'm Lucas Kitchen. This is More to the Story with Lucas Kitchen. I would encourage you to subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcasts. So I want to jump right into it today because we got big news. Can you believe it? I don't know if you can. For maybe the first time in history, Joe Biden has said something that people in the South of the United States actually agree with. I'm not trying to poke fun. It's just there's a lot of disagreement going around right now. But Joe Biden has said something that I think will make Southerners happy. He recently said in a 60 Minutes interview that the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, is over. Now, that's not the official position of the CDC and the World Health Organization, as far as I can tell, but it probably is soon to follow. They're still calling it a health emergency, but Joe Biden has come out and said that, yeah, you guys, it's over. Now, in the South, we're kind of like, what pandemic, right? I mean, there was definitely a pandemic. I had friends who died due to COVID-19 and complications. However, it's felt like it's been over for a while, at least in the area where I live. I don't live in a massive population center, and so it's felt like it's kind of been over for a little while. Many businesses are back to normal. Churches are generally back to normal. We'll talk about that a little bit here in a second. But it's felt like it's over, and so I'm just saying, hey, thanks to the president for acknowledging the reality that we're feeling, at least here in the South. Now, one of the things that I'm interested in is what this pandemic has done in terms of people of faith and how it's changed people's faith over the last 2-3 years. I guess it was 19, so that's been a few years now. Now, a piece of Pew Research that I located this morning was pretty enlightening. It said that 3% of Americans claimed that the pandemic weakened their faith, and they believed that it might have weakened the faith of others as well. Now, that comes as kind of a surprise to me. I sort of expected more people to say that their faith was weakened because of the pandemic. I didn't expect it to be a massive amount, but I expected it to be a little higher than 3%. So I suppose maybe that is a good thing that only 3% say that their faith was weakened. I suspect that those were people that were already struggling with the faith. And the reason why I say that is because of something we'll talk about here in a second. So 28% said that their faith was strengthened through the pandemic because of and there's not a whole lot of information in this Pew Research, but because of the pandemic that their faith was strengthened. 68% said that there's no difference in their faith, that their faith was not strengthened or damaged because of the pandemic. They basically are at the same place they were pre-pandemic. And to me, that's kind of sad because we had a very anxiety-induced situation for quite a while. That was a real opportunity for people's faith to grow. About 28% of people felt that, but about almost 70% of people really weren't feeling that. Now, here's an interesting thing about these numbers is that the ones who said that their faith was strengthened, they were those who had the strongest involvement or the strongest engagement in religious activities. So those who attended services and have gone back to attending services, those that attend regularly, not just online, not just live stream, but actually in person, generally those are the ones who are saying that the pandemic strengthened their faith. And this is not really any surprise if you're familiar with Scripture, because what the Bible tells us is that it is a choice to view every trial that we face as either an opportunity to grow, or we can resist that growth, and it can be just an opportunity to really kind of run from the Lord, so to speak. So I was listening to a radio show the other day that said, and I really liked the way that he put this, he said that faith follows engagement or some form of that. And what he meant by it, he explained that there are lots of studies that have shown this, that faith isn't necessarily strengthened when we're isolated. It's the social aspect of being in church or being in religious community community that strengthens our faith. And so faith follows those things. It doesn't generally predate it, so to speak. It follows. And so when we get physically engaged in a church, that is when our faith grows. There's something about that social interaction that grows the faith. And so if you want your faith to grow, it seems like the solution is pretty clear. I think it's safe to say that live stream doesn't replace attendance. Now, we tried this for a while, right? I mean, I've got a studio right behind my house that we use for our ministry. We live streamed what we called church services, but they didn't really feel like church services, if I'm being completely honest, because we had some text interaction and sometimes some face interaction if we ever used Zoom, but it wasn't the same. It's not the same as getting in person. And my theory for this is that we are really good at ignoring things that are digital. I mean, we scroll past stuff all day long on our social media and we ignore stuff. But when you're face to face with someone, it's not as easy to ignore. And so there's something about getting together that makes a huge difference in terms of the faith. And so here's what I'm saying today. It's time to get back in church. A piece of Lifeway research has recently told us that the numbers, the pre-pandemic numbers that we were seeing in church attendance, they haven't returned, even though, especially in the South, the pandemic has kind of felt like it's been over for quite a while. And surveys have shown that people feel like the pandemic has been over for a while. But the numbers, and this was January of 2022, the numbers had only gotten back up to about 74%. Now, they probably are a little higher now. I know that at the church where I attend, the numbers are looking pretty normal, pretty close back to the pre-pandemic attendance, but they're still not where they were almost everywhere. They're still not where they were. And so this is kind of the call to, let's get back in church. Makes me think of this verse. It might be a verse that you think of. We hear it often, and I know a lot of preachers have hobby horsed on this, but there's a phrase in here that is the part we hear the most. It says that we should not give up the meeting together as some are in the habit of doing. So this phrase from Hebrews 10:24, or maybe that's from 25, it's preached a lot. And sermons usually just preach it as a command, like you're commanded to meet together. But that's kind of leaving out some of the context. So check out what the context says. It says, "And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds." Now, does the world need more love and good deeds? Absolutely. The world needs more love and good deeds. So the point, he's saying, of meeting together, number one, the point is to encourage each other to have more love and to do good deeds, to do more good deeds. So meeting together has that purpose. There's something about meeting together that allows us to encourage each other to love and to have more good deeds. And so that's something we need. Now notice what he says after. He says, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. So there's, first of all, meeting together is for the purpose of stirring up love and good deeds, but then there's a second purpose that we see in these verses, and it's that we are to remind each other that Jesus is going to return. That's part of attending in person, is that there is this urgency, at least at churches that teach this, that we need to remember that Christ is going to return. And so I want to encourage you, if you haven't gotten back in church, if you're still kind of lingering there at the fringes, I would encourage you, it's time to get back in church, because you need love and good deeds, and you need to be reminded about the coming day of the Lord. Those are beautiful things that you get at most, at least evangelical churches. Now, you might be saying, well, I didn't like the church I was at before. Well, maybe it's time to look for a church that does this for you, that helps you have more love and good deeds, and to remember that Christ will return soon. Well, thank you so much for watching. I'll be back with you soon.